Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
From Social Security to the IRS, it seems like federal budget cuts by the Trump administration are being felt everywhere. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Today, the focus was on science across the nation. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne says hundreds stood up for science at UC San Diego.
What will we do? Stand up for science. When will we do it? Now. Science is under attack, but more than that, the people who dedicate their lives to understanding and protecting our world are under attack.
Hundreds of UC San Diego faculty, staff, and students came together for the Stand Up for Science rally, part of a nationwide movement.
We are one of the very few universities in the nation to have a climate change education requirement. So it's no surprise that they're coming for us.
Senseless and draconian cuts to grant overheads means that universities will not be able to provide the infrastructure and the support staff necessary to sustain research programs. Yes, this means research programs will end.
Faculty and staff say the cuts could hit San Diego harder, with top research institutions like Scripps Institution of Oceanography and UC San Diego Health.
The reality is that San Diego has a lot of science community, a lot of biotech industry.
Cristian Casares is a postdoctoral researcher in the Cognitive Science Department at UCSD.
The reality is that federal funding for every dollar invested through what is being cut, it turns into 2.5 times of investment into the local economy. That means jobs, that means people spending money at restaurants and local businesses. All of that will be gone if the current pause on federal funding to universities is not gone.
He says in the midst of federal cuts, scientific research needs to be spared.
If you know anybody with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, or any type of cancer, their health and maybe your future health, if you're affected by these conditions, will deteriorate as we will be unable to find cures for these conditions and we will be unable to provide treatment. So the impacts of these cuts are going to be seen immediately in the hospitals.
He says this rally is only the beginning, and science supporters will continue pressuring UCSD leadership and congressional representatives for support.
This fight isn't just for funding. It's for the future of science, the future of our oceans, and the future we all share. Thank you.
Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Local leaders and community members gathered in the South Bay today with a message to President Trump and Elon Musk: hands off Social Security.
We're going to fight them in Washington, and we're going to fight them in the courts. We'll fight them everywhere we need to fight, and we're going to win at the end of the day.
Democratic Congressman Juan Vargas led a small group of people outside of the Chula Vista branch office today to speak out against the president's proposed cuts to Social Security. He says the administration's plan to shut down offices would hurt about 70 million American workers, including 125,000 people in Vargas's district.
It's very important to note this, that all these cuts that they're attempting to make, that we have to fight to make sure they don't make, all that money's not going to reduce the deficit that they cut or the long-term debt. The math that the Republicans are using, especially Trump and Musk, doesn't make sense. The only way it makes sense is if they cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, VA benefits. That's the only way they can make their targets to get these trillions of dollars of tax cuts for their billionaire buddies.
The Social Security Administration says the agency has about 1,200 field offices across the U.S. 47 are listed for closure on the Department of Government Efficiency's website, including a non-public office in Carlsbad. The future of the U.S. Department of Education is in limbo. President Donald Trump has vowed to sign an executive order soon to formalize its dismantling. As Laura Aguirre explains, educators, lawmakers, and families are weighing their next moves.
Do we need this department?
No.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon on Fox News this morning, backing her boss on his plans to level her department.
Ultimately, we want to close the Federal Department of Education.
Promises on the campaign trail last fall could soon be signed as a presidential executive order. As for the nearly 4,300 employees working for McMahon,
in a country where we right now have over 8 million openings and jobs, I think there'd be a lot of places for them to go. We'd like to help them get there.
she suggests the nation isn't getting its money's worth from the DOE.
Since the Department of Education was established in 1980, we've spent over $1 trillion to see our scores continue to go down.
She is wrong.
Lisa Quant is a special education teacher in Illinois.
You cannot base everything on this testing. That's absolutely ludicrous.
McMahon points to the nation's report card, also called the NAEP, which for 2024 shows overall scores ticking up and down or staying the same in subjects like math and reading, depending on the grade level. Quant says other critical services eclipse test scores.
Things like occupational therapy, speech and language, mental health support.
What he's doing is harming people.
Matt Platkin is New Jersey's Attorney General, one of the states suing the Trump administration over agency cuts like this.
There's a way to do this. He can go to Congress. He's not even properly attempting to follow the legal process laid out in our Constitution.
The White House did not respond to a request for comment. Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
We've gotten rid of the moisture, but boy, are we in for another chilly night. Temperatures falling into the mid-40s in the city. We'll be talking about how low the Saturday morning starts off and where we're headed for the week to come in the forecast ahead.
Chula Vista is preparing to welcome the long-awaited Gaylord Pacific Resort, a massive hotel that will sit on the city's bayfront. KPBS South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says the company behind the resort is kicking off a series of job fairs ahead of its grand opening.
Hundreds of people were lined up at Southwestern College this morning to apply for jobs at the new Gaylord Resort and Convention Center, which is set to open in Chula Vista in just a few months. Marriott, the parent company behind the new hotel, says they're looking to hire 800 new staff members, everything from baristas and chefs to accountants and IT specialists.
It's exciting to be here.
Rebecca McKinner works in the culinary department at Petco Park. She loves cooking food from Italy and Korea, and her mom's home state of Yucatan in Mexico. She's excited about the idea of working at a resort, something she's never done before.
I want to be like a lead cook, maybe even try for sous chef, you know? Maybe I'm just shooting my shot, but if I don't shoot it, then how will I know, right?
The Gaylord project has been almost 25 years in the making for the city. John McCann is the mayor of Chula Vista.
It's been a great team effort. We've had several mayors, several council members, all working together. We've had the business community, the environmental community, all working together. And it's great to be able to now finally say that the Gaylord Hotel Resort will be open May of this year.
4 more job fairs are planned over the next 2 weeks. In Chula Vista, Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
City crews removed the last utility pole in Rolando today. Now, all the power lines are buried underground. More than 40 power poles in the neighborhood were removed over the last few months. The new underground lines will power more than 300 homes. The city says burying the lines makes the area safer, nicer looking, and makes power to homes more reliable. But neighbors told our media partner KGTV they're frustrated with the state of their streets.
I can attest to you, everyone in this neighborhood is so frustrated with the city and the lack of maintenance on these streets. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And we've been told for more than a year and a half the streets are going to get redone.
SDG&E says streets can't be repaved until after all the utility poles are gone. Now that they are, the city says repaving will start next month and could take several weeks before it's complete. San Diego is considering an increase to the city's cannabis business tax to help close a budget deficit. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says city staff acknowledge the move could backfire.
San Diego taxes cannabis retailers at 8% of their gross receipts. That's already the highest in the county. But the city treasurer's department is asking for an increase to 10%. And it admits the move could reduce revenue by pushing more consumers to the illicit market. Kimberly Sims is a cannabis attorney. She says a tax hike could also push more business to suburbs with lower taxes and more shops to choose from.
Why would I pay 10% tax when I could now go to my La Mesa dispensary and they only impose a 4% tax? So we're not being competitive with the cities around us. And I think it's short-sighted.
San Diego was an early adopter of legal cannabis, but the land use regulations on dispensaries were written more than 11 years ago. Sims says if the city wants more revenue from the industry, it should allow the industry to grow by offering more licenses and allowing new types of businesses.
We can look down to National City or up to West Hollywood and maybe really consider consumption lounges, which drive tourism, which drive longer patronage and higher sales and greater revenue.
The city council is scheduled to vote on the cannabis tax increase Monday afternoon. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Tariffs on all products from Mexico and Canada have been put on a one-month pause, a significant walkback from the Trump administration's signature economic plan. Our Washington correspondent, Julia Benbrook, has more on this week's Back and Forth.
Just hours before his joint address to Congress, President Donald Trump enacted 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, a move that received criticism from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, with several of them calling on him to backtrack. In his speech, he admitted that Americans might feel a little disturbance, but added, quote, "We are okay with that." The very next day, he announced a short-term exemption for the auto industry, and later in the week delayed the tariffs on goods that are covered by the trade agreement signed between the three countries during his first term.
I wanted to help Mexico and Canada to a certain extent. We're a big country, and they do a lot of their business with us, whereas in our case, it's much less significant. We do very little with Canada by comparison. And I wanted to help the American car makers until April 2nd.
The delay Trump announced is only for a month, and the reciprocal tariffs, which Trump initially framed as matching other countries dollar for dollar on their taxes on U.S. imports, are still expected to go into effect on April 2nd. Some of the details about which countries and which products will be affected remain unclear. A trade war among the three nations poses significant risk to all three countries. The back and forth on tariffs alone is causing confusion. Trump has routinely threatened or briefly put in place tariffs only to announce delays or pauses, leaving corporate America unclear on how to invest and whether to hire. At the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The Department of Homeland Security announced today it will end collective bargaining for TSA security officers. It was originally granted under the Obama administration and later expanded under President Biden. The American Federation of Government Workers says nearly 50,000 TSA workers will be impacted. Our media partner KGTV spoke to a legal analyst who says he believes the agency is acting within its right to limit bargaining protections.
They had just signed a 7-year contract with the union, so to break that contract in the middle of it, is that part legal?
Well, whether it is legal probably ultimately will be up to the courts, because the union has suggested that it is not going to accept this without a fight.
The DHS says TSA has too many people doing full-time union work rather than performing screening functions. The union told KGTV it wants to fight this long-term, but for now, TSA workers are no longer represented by a union. With spring break right around the corner, there are warnings about potential issues with both travel and safety. Brian Abel reports on what you need to know before you book that trip.
Spring break travel expected to break records again.
We are seeing that travelers are flocking to warmer destinations.
AAA says 3 of the top 4 destinations in the U.S. are in Florida. including Fort Lauderdale and Miami. If you plan on hitting the beach there, local leaders have a message for you.
Worst spring break ever.
In a PSA satirizing reality TV shows the city of Miami Beach, warning potential spring break revelers of restrictions and enforcement actions that may damper your plans.
How you guys doing?
What's going on?
You're drinking in public. That's not allowed. This speaker, that's not allowed.
Rule after rule after rule.
Expensive parking, curfews, DUI checkpoints, and a heavy police presence are highlighted. It's part of a larger crackdown following the chaos of recent years, including stampedes and 2 deadly shootings in 2023. Further north, the Volusia County Sheriff doubling down on the message for high schoolers heading to popular county beaches like Daytona or New Smyrna.
If they think we're playing here, we're not. We really don't want you here. I'm going to be honest with you. Nobody wants you here.
There's also warnings for international travelers heading to popular destinations like Mexico. The State Department giving a level 3 travel advisory telling Americans to reconsider travel, with the U.S. Embassy in Mexico saying because of crime, exercise caution in popular areas like Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Tulum. In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
From San Ysidro to Barrio Logan to Mission Hills, San Diego is a city of distinct neighborhoods. You can explore many of them this weekend during Open House San Diego. One of the organizers says the free events and architecture tours help people connect with design in their communities.
And this is the one time of year that someone will open up their shop, or a small ADU that's amazing, or, you know, this building that you walk by downtown and you're like, who lives there?
Maps, guides, and more information are available online at sdarchitecture.org. Don't forget to spring forward this weekend. Daylight saving time begins on Sunday, thank goodness. And while it'll mean more daylight during evening hours, it can also disrupt sleep patterns. Mandy Gaither talks to a sleep psychologist about how to not lose sleep over the time change.
Here comes the sun. On Sunday, March 9th at 2 a.m., spring your clocks forward, but make sure you're also shifting your sleep.
With daylight savings time, it disrupts our natural circadian rhythm. So that's our body's kind of internal sleep clock.
Michelle Drerup with Cleveland Clinic says the shift in light exposure can cause sleep disturbances for days after the change. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine says it's also linked to a rise in car crashes, cardiovascular events, mood changes, and other problems.
Some people are more affected by the change than others, and people who are more affected are likely people who already have some sleep difficulties.
To lessen the impact on your sleep, experts say to gradually adjust your bedtime and wake time by 15 to 20 minutes before the time change to help your body adjust. Alter daily routines like meal times, which are time cues for your body. Get at least 7 hours of sleep before and after the change to make sure you're adequately rested, and expose yourself to bright morning sunlight the week after the time change to help reset your internal clock.
For most people, just, being mindful and aware, but also not getting too distressed or overly focused on it is best.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
The CDC says having good sleep hygiene is important, not just during the time change, but always. That includes keeping your bedroom quiet and cool, avoiding large meals and alcohol before bed, and avoiding caffeine late in the day. The agency says regular exercise and a healthy diet can also help.
Here's the really good news for us. As we head into the weekend, it gets brighter, it gets a little bit more pleasant. We actually find the numbers going up. There's lots of benefits, and into next week, don't worry, we'll still have the chance for more rain to come. We've got another cold night, though, on tap first. So if you're headed out the door early tomorrow morning, you will want some of those extra layers because it's going to be fairly brisk in many locations. Meanwhile, we have a warmer, drier weekend coming up. The temperatures will go up even above historical average by the time we get into Sunday. But don't worry, there is more rain to come. That's going to knock numbers down Monday and Tuesday. That's our first chance The midweek rain chance could actually be more significant. That'll be beyond the 5-day there. As we talk about things, though, for tonight's forecast, you can see 46 the low in the city as you work your way to Oceanside, 39 degrees, 33 for the low in Ramona, and Mount Laguna coming in at 30 degrees. So quite chilly. High pressure continues to keep control here as we head through your Saturday, which means we're still kind of on the cooler pattern, but we're going to be rebounding. Most of that very chilly air mass takes off towards the east as, again, all the precipitation has left us. 66 the high as we look around the city, 65 in Oceanside. We'll go to 68 in Chula Vista, and Borrego Springs tops out at 75 degrees. As we get into next week, Monday night through Tuesday, that's when we talk about another storm system coming in. So after a quiet weekend, we see the action return in the form of rain for us. So there's going to be more rain here on the 5-day. Notice that threat for some more moisture here coming in Monday. And then we get into Wednesday. That's the beginning of the next storm system, which will provide some showers. So really the core of that coming through Wednesday into Thursday. And the numbers staying in the 60s there. As we work our way to the inland communities, we make it back to the mid-70s on Sunday, but starting to cool off yet again, heading into Tuesday, pretty chilly with showers as we wait that next storm system to work its way on through. For our mountain communities, the chance for some snow showers starts to return on Tuesday, and then with that significantly wetter system Wednesday, it actually could change to rain as we warm up a little bit. Desert communities, we are looking at keeping the clouds as we head into the middle of next week. So again, beautiful setup for the weekend here. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constancer.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the News Hour, why the mass firing of federal workers isn't reflected in the latest jobs numbers. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And be sure to join us tonight for KPBS News This Week, where we revisit the most impactful and intriguing original reporting of the week. This week airs every Friday at 8:30 right here on KPBS. The San Diego Zoo Safari Park just opened a brand new depot where visitors can embark on safari excursions to experience animals up close in the savanna habitat. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando visited the park to see what's new and the conservation efforts that continue.
Marco Wendt arrives for work, brimming with enthusiasm.
We are in my favorite place in the entire world. This is the 1,800-acre conservation park called the Safari Park in the town where I grew up in Escondido. It's over 3,500 animals that thrive here, and it represents over 300 different species. And not only that, if you look above us, all these beautiful trees, there's 1.3 million plants that live here as well.
But his passion is not the only reason he's the perfect wildlife ambassador for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance.
And it started because I didn't want to work with people. I loved animals.
That's easy to understand when you see the animals roaming through San Diego Zoo Safari Park. But it's not the exotic animals that make the biggest impression on Wendt.
Part of our park here, about 900 acres, is a wildlife biodiversity reserve. So a section of our park reserved for local wildlife. So my favorite moment, friend, at the park is coming in early before it opens. The sun is rising, and then I see turkey vultures soaring over San Pasqual Valley.
Or sunning themselves up in the trees. But if he wanted to protect these animals he loved, he needed to enlist people to help.
A lot of us here in this kind of field realize that, conservation 100% begins with human beings. And we want to inspire that desire to get connected with Mother Nature. So maybe a small child from the local school comes into the safari park and sees a tiger face to face for the first time and gets that excitement over that animal, and that hopefully in the future, possibly they can become an advocate for conservation, or maybe take part and get hands deep with these conservation efforts happening globally.
To help foster those connections, the safari park just opened a new depot.
This is called Safari Excursions. This is the point where all of our guests can embark on those amazing adventures. Guests can't access this entire park by foot, so our wildlife safari truck, as an example, is the perfect way to get into those large field habitats where you can see herds of giraffe and rhino, and you can go out and just feel like you're out in a savanna in Africa and see wildebeest running over a hill as the sun is rising.
You can also get close enough to smell them.
And honestly, my favorite smell of the safari park are the gorillas. There's just something about a gorilla that'll just wake you up in the morning.
And hear them.
even a little thing like hearing a rhino snort in the morning will really just remind you of the beauty of Mother Nature. And this is what we're going to offer every single day as a unique experience here at the Safari Park.
One surefire attraction is baby animals, like the Joey born at the San Diego Zoo. But while cuddly fur babies get clicks, Wendt wants to highlight the conservation work that isn't always obvious to the public.
We're San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance as a whole organization, an international nonprofit. We have 8 conservation hubs around the world. So we do work maybe here in the Southwest with the California condor, or maybe Sumatra with a tiger. So you're going to see depictions of these projects along the side here of this waiting area. My personal favorite is this little detail, the border that you see around each photograph actually represents the chromosomes of these species we're referencing right now. So you see that connectivity. And a reminder too, not only is it a zoo, we're also a conservation science. So we have one of the largest frozen zoos of genetic living material here on the planet to help out, hopefully, in case we need to, for future conservation efforts with a variety of different species. So there's so much going on here at the Safari Park.
Wendt hopes the Safari Park can be a catalyst for activism.
And so I tell people this is an opportunity to have an adventure, get inspired about Mother Nature, but also take part in something bigger than yourself and all this community work that we do globally.
But it doesn't hurt to sweeten the deal with a few adorable babies. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Tell you, one of San Diego County's many treasures. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll. Have an excellent evening and a wonderful weekend.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.